Welcome to Exploring Anime with Friends, a JMO for Real podcast on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. I'm your host, JMO. And today's friend is my co-host, Ethan. How's it going today, Ethan?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Excited to be part of the second installment of Exploring Anime with Friends movie edition.
I am, yeah.
Nice, nice. And today we're going to be talking about My Neighbor Totoro, a Studio Ghibli film from the legendary Miyazaki, released in January of 1988. It is a heartwarming fantasy slice of life with themes of dealing with grief. So, My Neighbor Totoro, what are your thoughts, Ethan?
I'm a big fan of Studio Ghibli's kind of take on storytelling. Yeah, I was really excited to revisit this movie.
Nice. So first we'll be taking a look at our main characters, and after that we will then talk about the move that they are making to enter this world where they become neighbors with Totoro. And then we'll talk about Totoro and the adventures that he takes them through and the overlying story of what he's helping these two girls through and this family unit as a whole. So we mentioned Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli a couple of times already. Just talk about the importance of Studio Ghibli, with anime films as a whole.
Studio Ghibli has become like a very foundational piece to kind of transforming animation. They've definitely left their mark and continue to make waves with new films that come out. There's so many hits you can name that have come out of that production company. And just the way that they approach storytelling and animation in general. I mean, there's so much attention to detail. They really seek to try to immerse you in the world and in very nuanced ways.
You really can't talk anime movies without talking about Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki and really just kind of these legendary films that he has put out. This is one of the most, if not the most popular Studio Ghibli film because of the character of Totoro is just so endearing as a whole. But before we start talking about the character of Totoro, we should probably start to mention our other main characters first, Satsuki and Mai. You're following their journey as they move out to the countryside, and we'll go a little more into that in a moment. But first, their personalities. Talk to us about Satsuke.
Sasuke's the older sister. I don't think they say any ages, but I would say she's probably around 9.
She seems
She's
about 9. As someone who has a daughter that's almost 9 years old now, I can see a lot of comparisons between Satsuke and Autumn.
Yeah, she's got like big sistery kind of mentality. She plays
Yeah.
along well with my,
She aspires to be someone who's looked up to by her little
yeah.
sister.
She's like I said, like she's very playful with her sister. She'll get right into playing along when they move into this new house.
One of the beautiful things about when they made it to the new house for the first time, Mai is literally copying everything that Satsuke is doing. She's running around doing exactly the same thing. She really looks up to her big sis.
Yeah, they do a really nice job of portraying that dynamic. It really felt like watching real sibling interaction like that because I have 2 kids and you have a daughter and like seeing that just how that's portrayed. I mean, like I said, Studio Ghibli really goes all in on little things here and there to make you feel like you're more of a bystander in a movie as opposed to sitting on a couch watching something. So yeah, so Satsuki, she plays into that older sister role very well. And then Mai, on the other hand, is a very, I don't want to say sporadic, but she's a very energetic,
Curious, wide-eyed.
yeah, curious little girl who looks
The
up to
world
her
is made to be
sister.
discovered.
Oh yeah. I mean, she's eager to get into exploring this house and beyond and just has this, adoration for her sister that again, it's just really well done how they shaped that out.
Yeah, and Mai's probably around the age of 5 or so. So anyone who has 2 kids like we do, that where one of them is definitely the older sibling and the other one is definitely the younger sibling, you can see throughout the movie, you can see parts of your kids in these 2 characters, Satsuke and Mai. And it's really just kind of very heartwarming. A parent watching this connects to it immediately. Not saying that anybody else won't connect to it immediately because it's very easy to connect to. But as a parent watching it, I connected to it immediately. And my daughter really, she watched it with me. She connected to it immediately too. It was just so beautiful the way to watch it. And they start exploring this new place because they're moving out to the countryside countryside because their mom's sick and they need to be closer to the hospital. So they're moving to this new area. The opening scene, they're driving in on the moving van and they're hiding in the back because, they're with all the furniture because, it's set in a much simpler time and place. I actually believe that this is, if I remember correctly, reading about the setting of it, this is post World War II Japan.
Yeah, I
So
think so.
it's a lot of recovering. It's countryside. There are rice fields around, and it doesn't. I'm not going to say there's a lot of poverty because our main family isn't poor. Like the father, he's a university professor, so they're not poor. They definitely have money. They have a large property and a house, but it's a very simple way of living. So it takes you back to that, and they're exploring this house together. And as they're exploring the house, tell us a little about what they find while exploring this house.
Yeah, so as the girls head upstairs, they find these little, almost real life dust mites, essentially, that kind of scurry away from them as they get upstairs and they check out one of the rooms.
Dust
And
pixies.
yeah, so they see these things and they immediately are like drawn into that and trying to find the source of them and telling their dad. And their dad plays into it. Like, I mean, he's like, it's interesting because the movie, I don't think draws a line between, okay, does the dad actually believe this or is he playing it off? He'll just say, like, oh, well, maybe our house is haunted, or maybe he doesn't call them, I don't think he's the one who names them, but he was like, oh, well, maybe there's some little like ghosts here and there. And
I interjecting really quick because I will admit it is definitely confusing, but I feel like when he took them to the shrine in the forest
Mhm,
with the a giant tree and he told his daughters about this was, during the time when people and trees actually talk to each other. I think he believes in the magic,
mhm.
but he doesn't know if it's around anymore.
Okay.
Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, and I could pick up on that too. Yeah, so that's how kind of this movie starts to pick up, is once as they're exploring this house, they notice those little dust gremlins. The neighbor who is like a caretaker for their house,
Granny.
this elderly lady, she is also like, oh, like maybe they are out there, and because she notices that these like
Well, she
I'm gonna
admitted to seeing them as a child. It's just she hadn't seen them in a while. That she definitely believes in these dust pixies. And she was the one who told them it's like, because you guys are nice people, I'm pretty sure that they're meeting together right now to agree to move out.
yeah.
And later that night, they move out, and you see them float off into the tree. The right next to the property, there is this almost like, I want to call it an enchanted forest of sorts. There's this giant tree that oversees the property, and there's thick woods and brush all the way around it. And this plays very much into the next day when Satsuke's at school and Mai is wandering around the property and she sees something.
So she's wandering around and she notices kind of this translucent, like small bunny-ish looking spirit wandering around. And at first it doesn't notice her, and then she makes herself known and it starts to run from her and she follows it. And as she's chasing after it, she finds by that big tree you're talking about, she finds, the namesake of the movie, Totoro, who's essentially like a gigantic version of that. I guess my best description, because he's kind of like Snorlax. I think that would be a pretty apt description. Would you
Giant
agree?
bunny Snorlax.
Yeah.
That's pretty fair. And that's where she meets him for the first time. That's where she meets Totoro, and she spends an afternoon napping on him. Later, her father and her older sister go to look for her, and they just find her in the clearing that she went to. And she's looking around for the entrance to Totoro's place because she fell down like a tree trunk in order to get there. She keeps on looking around, and she's like, I know it's there. And the father's kind of like, well, maybe they just, don't want to be seen at this point in time. And Satsuke is upset because she wants to meet Totoro. And it's at this point in time that the father takes them to that tree shrine and more or less like says a prayer of sorts, thanking them for overseeing their property and being with them. So it's kind of a little bit of a heartwarming moment. It was a very interesting moment to watch. Talk to us a little bit because this family does play a role. Granny is the actual grandma of a boy named Kanta. Talk to us about Kanta a little.
Yeah, so Kanta is roughly around or the same age as Satsuki. He's a very shy kid around, at least around girls or Satsuki. He's
He
very
crushing on her.
Yeah, I think so. He's very childhood boyish. He's not gonna talk to her, but he is gonna like help her out with stuff. He kind of gets in trouble. Like you can tell he'll get in trouble from Granny or his mom just because of like he'll talk back to them, or sometimes think he's building like a paper, not a paper, but some kind of like plane when we're first seeing him at home because his granny helps out at the house, like he'll also help out, but he's kind of reluctant to do so. But also on the other hand, like he also likes to do that, as you see later on. So
Yeah, he's working in the rice field with his parents. And one of the things that he kind of gets in a little trouble for during the movie is he comes home without his umbrella one day. What did he do with that umbrella, and what encounter did that lead to?
as the girls were supposed to be heading home, and so he encountered them, kind of did a double take, like it was his, conscious telling him like, no, you should give them yours. And then so he like hands his to Satsuki without saying a word and just runs off.
So after the girls get home safely, they pick up their dad's umbrella and they get their own umbrellas, and they return the umbrella home to Kanta, and then they head to the bus station to wait for their dad to bring him his umbrella because it's raining out. So they don't want their dad to have to get sick while walking back in the rain from the bus stop. And while they're at the bus stop, they meet a couple of people, right?
Yeah, they are waiting. First kind of bus stop arrives and their dad's not on it, so they continue to stand by and wait. And as they're waiting, Totoro shows up in the rain and he's only got a like leaf to protect him. So Satsuki hands over the umbrella to him, and in turn he gives them like this package of like acorns and nut, like all wrapped up for them. And then he departs on a cat bus, which is exactly what
Yeah.
it sounds like. It's this whimsical monster bus cat. I mean, I don't know. It like pounces around, it expands to accommodate anyone's size. And it's just a brief interaction of them just being nice to Totoro. Totoro thanks them, he departs. And then shortly after that, their dad arrives on the late bus.
They are so excited that they keep on telling their dad about Totoro and how he was at the bus stop and sharing their excitement with him. Like you could tell it really made their night. So they plant the seeds. And during this time, there's a time skip in the movie because you remember that Satsuki is writing her mom throughout because they can't always see her all the time. They're closer to her, but they can only visit every now and again. So they're actually writing back and forth. The 3 months are going by since the seeds have been planted into the ground and nothing's happening. And then one magical night, Totoro shows up and starts throwing the seeds.
He shows up with two like mini spirits, kind of mini versions of him almost, and they just start dancing around the seeds. And the girls just simply they watch at first, and then they take to copying what Totoro does, and the seeds start sprouting, and then they shoot up again into like joining this enchanted forest, and the girls are just out there like on this like magical top,
Just
just
spinning through the countryside, holding on
yeah.
to Totoro as he's showing them all the beautiful and wonderfulness. And Totoro is, I fully believe Totoro is very much real in this movie. Totoro always seemed to come to them at a point in time when their grief could have been the highest. Totoro became the thing that helped these two girls through the struggle of having a mom who, they don't come out and say she's terminally ill because, you keep on thinking that, yeah, no, it seems like there's an opening that there will be a recovery someday. And it seems like there's a good chance that the mom is recovered post movie. But at the same time, it's a sickness that has kept their mom away from them for a long time. And Totoro knows when he has to be there for those two girls and give them this sort of an experience. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would.
So, and this all leads up to a point in time where Totoro is most important because the long story short, there was a time when the mom's supposed to come home for the weekend and the two girls are all excited. Mai is talking about how she's going to share this wonderful corn with her mom because Granny said that her vegetables can make anyone feel better. So Mai is so fixated on wanting to share the corn she has with her mom. And then her mom catches a cold and has to stay at the hospital. And that really leads to a big part of the movie. And we're not going to talk too much about that. This is where we tell you to watch the movie, right?
Yeah, this movie compared to the other Studio Ghibli movies that I've seen is very light on plot, but heavy on atmosphere or just trying to set up like a certain kind of like feeling in the viewer. That definitely I think would be a good jumping off point.
Because this is where the plot in the movie really takes place. Up to this point in time, you're really just learning about who Satsuki and Mai are, and you're going through their journey up to this point in time. Their journey as sisters, their journey as daughters, their journey as now country girls, and their journey with Totoro. And you're actually really seeing how Totoro kind of latches onto them. Totoro knows when to be there and how long to be there for. And that really is important. Everything we've told you with the cat bus and Totoro's personality and the girl's personality and their relationship really leads you to this point at the end where one domino just leads to a whole bunch of rest. And it really gives the movie a strong story-driven ending.
Yeah, things just kind of culminate around that. Just like it centers on just kind of one moment in the movie that everything kind of just builds up, and then it's like a very brief, very tight.
Very heartwarming, very magical too.
Yeah,
It's beautiful. Anyone who's a fan of heartwarming animation as a whole should watch this. You don't even have to be into anime because honestly, I watched it with myself. I knew Autumn would love it. I watched it with Autumn. I watched it with Autumn and Sarah. And then Autumn just kept on asking for it over and over again until it got replaced with something else. So this got seen a lot in this house recently. And, you know, I'm not complaining. Any final thing that you want to say about My Neighbor Totoro as a whole?
I would say I would highly recommend that for viewers out there who haven't yet seen it to really take time for this movie. You know, don't watch it in the background or don't watch it with like any
Yeah,
kind of distraction because it's really worth taking in exactly what they're trying to do, and I might pronounce his name wrong, Hayao Miyazaki, what he's really going after for kind of again, like I said, setting things up and creating this setting.
I
The
would argue
girls,
too that not only what you're saying is true, but I would say that this is the type of movie where watching it a second time after you watch it the first actually adds impact and meaning.
yeah, once you get that immersion in, especially you and I as parents, like it really starts to it feels like this was the best medium for telling this story, but it doesn't feel like you're watching, like it's strictly like a piece of anime. Like this, it
Yeah.
feels like you're watching real life girls feeling heart wrench over their mother's condition and all the other stuff we talked about them doing, even the playing. Like it really is like something that's gonna throw you in and make you feel like I said, like you're not a viewer, like you're a bystander.
Yep.
At least that's how I felt.
So once again, we explored the journey that Satsuki and Mai took out to the countryside, how they met Granny and the supernatural and the magical elements that exist in this part, despite the fact that it's a very normal life. We went into how they met their neighbor Totoro and how Totoro helped them through the rough time of their mom's trip to recovery. And then we encouraged you to watch this because this is a anime movie worth exploring. We hope you had as much time exploring the world of My Neighbor Totoro as we had and watch this anime film. So if you like what you heard today, make sure to listen to us on Apple and Spotify. All of our podcasts are there. All of the J-Mail for Real podcasts are on there. Check us out on social media and interact with us there. It is linked in the show notes. Until next time, this has been Exploring Anime with Friends, a J-Mail for Real podcast. Let's explore together.